Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone was first published in 1997 in the United Kingdom, and almost immediately the book began being translated into other languages, with German, Italian, and Danish coming out in 1998. Shortly, other languages began to follow suit, and now, 20 years later, there are 88 authorized translations of Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, and quite a few unauthorized translations floating around as well. The languages span the globe, from Greenland and Iceland to Malaysia and South Africa. But sadly, not all of these languages are healthy. Some are vulnerable, and others are considered endangered. So without any further delay, here are 2 endangered languages of Harry Potter. Asturian, also called Asturiano or Bable, is a Romance language found mostly in the autonomous community of the Principality of Asturias. Currently, the language is considered threatened by Ethnologue.com and is cataloged as definitely endangered by UNESCO. The language dates back to the early Middle Ages, evolving from the Vulgar Latin. The transition from Latin was slow, and the language developed orally faster. But by the 12th century, an early form of Asturian called Astur Leonese began appearing in the king's official documents and wills, and by the early 17th century, Anton González Reguera was the author of the first preserved Asturian literary work. Socially, the language is marginalized and regarded as a second-class language. It's spoken primarily in rural areas. The language isn't in need for most jobs within Spain or the region, and it's only taught as an elective within schools. However, at the university level, you can finally seriously study Asturian. There are approximately 1 million speakers, with about 350,000 of them being first language learners. The language doesn't seem to be transmitting to the youth, a necessary component if a language is to survive, meaning the language is in decline, and as the older speakers die off, the language will be spoken less and less. In 1974, efforts to promote and protect Asturian were begun. Attempts were made to bring the language from the rural areas into modern urban Spain. Currently, there are radio stations that are almost entirely in Asturian and television stations that dedicate a few hours a week to Asturian broadcasting. Also, there are cultural publications and news periodicals printed only in Asturian. Although these efforts are bolstering the popularity of the language, it's still in overall decline. Breton, aka Brythonic, is a Celtic language that was carried over from the UK to the Lower Brittany area during the early Middle Ages. It's the only Celtic language that was so heavily influenced by French, and it's most closely related to Cornish. Currently, it's classified as shifting on Ethnologue.com and severely endangered by UNESCO. During the early Middle Ages, Old Breton was the language of the upper classes, until the 12th century, when French began to replace it, moving Breton to a language of the commoners. The French monarchy never concerned itself too much with lower-class languages, so never required it for use in government. Additionally, since the 19th century, under the 3rd, 4th, and 5th Republics, the French government has actively attempted to stamp out minority languages in state schools with the idea of building up a stronger national culture. It wasn't uncommon for teachers to humiliate minority language speakers. Today, the language is in steep decline despite revival efforts. In the 1950s, Breton had more than 1 million speakers, and now there are only about 200,000 speakers left, and over half of those are over 60. As they die, the language will be used less and less and continue to decline. Moreover, very few 15 to 19-year-olds claim to speak it. Revival efforts began with Ropars Hammond's Breton Language Review, Gwalarn, which ran for 19 years. In 1946, the language periodical Al Lam replaced it. Breton immersion schools were also formed in 1977 and are still around. Other than Harry Potter, other works like The Adventures of Tintin, Peanuts comics, and Asterix comics have been translated into Breton. There's also one Breton sitcom and a Breton radio station. Popular movies have also been translated, and in 2014, Facebook added Breton to its list of languages. But Breton remains the only Celtic language that is not recognized by a national government as an official or regional language, and despite the revival efforts, the language is still in decline. Language preservation is important. When a language dies, the knowledge and culture of those who spoke it die too. A unique way of looking at the world dies, which means the rich history, oral traditions, customs, teachings, and all that's associated with those who spoke the language also die. And with each language death, we lose some of the wonderful diversity that makes us unique. Using popular pieces of literature like Harry Potter to help with language preservation and promotion is not an uncommon practice. The book itself is loved by young and old readers worldwide, so why not use The Boy Who Saved the Wizarding World to help save an endangered language? For more information about the languages of Harry Potter, go to my website. You're also welcome to follow me on Instagram. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like. Thanks for watching and happy collecting.